What's going on, everybody? Once again, it's your homeboy E Short with the ENL Sports Talk Show, hanging with my homeboy Les. What's going on, Les?
Yo, E, what's going on, man? I'm good, man. Thank you very much, man. It's a good day, man. Got my brother Big Luke in the house,
There
man.
you go. I'm gonna let you take a hold of this thing, man. Go ahead, man, and
Yeah,
shoot your
man. Yo,
shot, man.
we played at Brooklyn Tech together, and not long enough, but
Yeah.
we did our thing, man. But he's always been a good brother, man. And I was pleasantly surprised to when we reached out through Facebook and that our paths didn't cross, but we were on the same path as far as Division II basketball. So, without further ado, man, Luke, introduce yourself.
It's Kevin Lucas, man. It's just another son of Brooklyn. You know, grew up. I was born actually in Brownsville at Kings County, and we lived there probably for like a year and a half before we moved out to East New York. And I was in the Linden houses. So, I went to actually all of our schools were pretty much right there, right around my building. I went to PS 306, Wayne Mackey, and went to Gershwin with Lance Durham and Wayne Mackey, so,
And Rob Dunbar.
and Dunbar, right? There's a cast of characters, man. So grew up in East New York, and it's it was pretty much a like you've heard in most of the other guys, pretty much life was around the projects, because I don't know if you remember, but Linden Houses was huge. It was probably what, four blocks. It went from uh, Stanley Avenue in Vermont all the way down to Van Slyckland, almost up into the Fairfield and Starrett City. So it was a pretty big place. We as a kid, I spent a lot of time. I wasn't like the most. I was, if you want to call it, I was probably the black swan. I was the ugly duckling kid. You know, I wasn't. At least early, I wasn't uh, physically gifted, especially with some of the other kids that were, grew up in my neighborhood. So I spent a lot of time getting picked last, for everything. But my father was pretty much, he was into sports because he was a boxer. He tried to get us into sports early. My brother really didn't like sports, but I liked it. So he'd go out and throw the football with me, and we do stuff like that. But my first real taste of basketball was when I was in elementary school at PS 306, and somehow or another I made the elementary school team with I don't know if you remember Jesse Massey.
That's my
He's
homeboy.
Yeah, he was we had a pretty good team. Of course, I played off the bench, so because I wasn't that good, everybody else was better. So, and that was kind of my first taste of basketball. That, and playing in the park with those guys. I used to always play with a lot of older guys because I wasn't, I was taller. I was kind of, thin, but I was taller. So for some reason, I used to always get, play with the older guys. But it was kind of, the first taste, and I grew up loving basketball. Watching the Knicks, and the Knicks were, decent back then. So, and as I got older, I got a little bit taller, and before you knew it, I was close to 5'10", and I was over in Gershwin. I didn't even. I don't think I got cut from Gershwin's team. They,
Mm.
I'm probably the only guy, that has a resume like me, that I got cut from Gershwin's team, right? So I didn't make the middle school team. I went to Tech, got cut from the freshman team of all the teams, right? The team I thought I was going to make. There's no way there's like, that many better freshmen than me, but I got cut from that team. So, so I still went to Gershwin because it was, the neighborhood school. And I played, just, rec ball, playing out in the park. Back behind my house was a hoop. And I played between, playing basketball there and playing like Pop Warner football. I stayed, pretty much, interested in athletics. And then my father taught me boxing.
Mm.
So we actually had a boxing gym in our building, back in the Linden houses. They had these things called carriage rooms. And, over the years, there were places where people would keep their baby buggies, and they would keep their bikes and, stuff like that. And over time, people started breaking into them and basically stealing the bikes. And, so they stopped leaving stuff in there. But the housing authority actually took and made them into gave them grants to make them into community centers. And so instead of kids, especially in the wintertime and stuff, instead of them out causes mischief and all kinds of stuff, they had places to go in the wintertime. And my father, who was kind of like a community guy, he took ours and turned it into a boxing ring. Half of it was a boxing ring with a speed bag and a heavy bag, and the other half was like games and a pool table.
Mm.
So we had, places to go in the wintertime. You didn't have to leave the building. And we had a couple of neighborhood tournaments, by age group, so he taught me how to box. And then he put me into these neighborhood contests. And, so I actually won my age group, but, it taught me a lot about eye-hand coordination, moving my feet, that kind of stuff. So that kind of helped
And
me.
also to knock people out, right?
Well, to tell you the truth, that I became a little bit of a fighter later, but that's another story we may get to. In the early years, I mean, I wouldn't back down from a fight, but I wasn't the kind that started fights. So, and we had a lot of tough kids between our in our building, and between Penn Workman and Linden houses, and this just the houses over in across the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue. So I could defend myself if I needed to. But it was a pretty, you know I don't know how if you guys did it, but we played basketball, we played football, we played baseball, we played softball, tag. It was just pretty much a mismatch of everything, during the year. And we had so many kids, that's what we did on Saturday, Saturday or Sunday, and as I got older, again, like I said, I started playing with older kids. We would play two-hand touch football in the park over there in Gershwin, where they basically have cones. And I'd be playing with, I was 12, 13, playing with these, 18, 19, 20-year olds. These guys were like seniors in high school, going off to college. I'm out there, playing with them.
Mm.
And, it was a good experience. And then about 70, we moved from one apartment building to another apartment building. And we went from 183 to 580, and 580 was like an 8-story building. It wasn't a 14-story. And that's when kind of my life and basketball kind of like, changed, because I I started hanging out with this kid named Mackie that lived in my building,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't Wayne, it was another Mackie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But he was my age, so we hung out. But he had an older brother named Raymond, who I don't know if you guys know his actual name was Lefty. They nicknamed him Lefty, and he was left-handed. He was about 6'1", could jump out the gym. He was basically, and he was probably 6 or 7 years older than me.
Mm.
And so we would go out in the back, play a one-on-one. We got to be friends, and he was big into basketball, even though he never left to go, play college. I think he left for like a semester and came back, like a lot of, guys did, back then. They couldn't handle, being out in New York. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm.
so, so he used to take me out in our backyard where we had, basketball courts, and he would just wear me out every freaking day,
Mm-hmm.
physical, just blocking my jump shot, coming, faking me and, coming in and dunking on me, shooting in my face, and, it was a lesson. It was it was education, you know, you had to be tough with him because, he wasn't taking, there was no mercy, and then, we would, uh, when he saw I wasn't going to back down from him, he would actually he took me under his wing. We would go out to the park. We lived across the street from Gershwin Park. So, Saturday mornings, when they would play, the old heads would play in Gershwin, he would bring me out there with him. And again, that's another, education. I'm playing with these grown ass men coming from Vietnam,
Wow.
and all these other places. And they're sitting out there smoking their cigarettes. They got the trash can with their Miller Lights, their ponies in it. Playing games and going out and sitting back, smoking and drinking, and going back and playing games. But they taught me a lot about basketball and about being tough. Because they would, if you like, if they gave you a bow and you didn't try to give it back to them, even though I was, kind of frail, they wouldn't pick you, or they'd keep picking on you. So you had to you had to stand up for yourself. So, and, it was actually a good lesson. Between that, we had another community center called Penn Wortman, which was an indoor. When it got cold, you don't want to be outside. You go up to Penn Wortman, and it was another good place where again, the older kids would come in and play, and you had to be of a certain caliber to actually even get a run. There are people who are called next, but they would make sure that you didn't get that next, if you couldn't play. So
Mm.
because they only had so much time. So my game started to actually get, got better, and I got a little taller, but I still wasn't putting on any weight. So by the time I turned 13 and went up to Tech, I went to Tech at 13. My parents actually put me in the school, earlier. My birthday's in December, so instead of them waiting until I turned like 5, they put me in at 4. So
Mm. Okay.
so I was pretty much, here I go down to Tech, right, out of Brownsville, out of East New York, this huge school, which I had been to, but I'd never seen that many kids in one place. I'm thinking, all right, I'm not too bad. I should be able to make the at least the freshman team. You know, I go up there and I get cut. I don't even make it to the last day. I got
Mm.
cut like, probably halfway through or second to the last cut. And I'm literally devastated because I'm thinking, I'm some hot player, at least from my neighborhood. And that's when I started seeing that, not only are there levels to this, but, you could be a small fish, a big fish in a small pond, but as you leave that pond, you get to find out if you're a shark or if you're a minnow. So this was like the next evolution of my progression. So I said, all right, I'm not going to play this year basketball. So I wound up running track, and because
Mm.
decent, I was still a decent athlete, and I was a long jumper for Tech for their JV team. I ran the 100, ran the 200, and they actually had me doing a 400 once, but pretty much long jumping and the short sprints. So during that year, I got a little stronger because they put me on a weight program, and I got a little taller. So by my sophomore year, I was probably 6'6" or 6'1", and I tried out for JV, got cut from the JV team, right?
Typical Tech.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Shelly was on JV. I used to see I used to see Les. I used to see Big George. Shelly Getter was on JV. All these guys. There was a guy named Doc that made JV. Actually, Doc had an interesting career because we graduated from Tech. He wound up robbing banks. But
What?
yeah, but so I said, all right. So I wound up. I had been playing football, and Pop Warner football. So I decided to play football. So I wound up playing, JV. They put me on the JV to start, and I played football for that year with Wayne. I don't know who else you would have known because there wasn't too many other basketball players that actually played football. Because football was such a physical sport.
Yeah.
But I got to be about. It was good for me because I love football. I actually liked football as much as I liked basketball, and had the football coach not, made me choose between basketball and football, I probably would have played both. So I had a talent for both. So again, just spent the year basically getting a little stronger, still playing football, playing basketball, and the next evolution actually in my kind of career actually happened. And I don't know if you remember Lester Pilgrim.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So I was playing for Lester's summer league team, and his winter team, winter ball. All the guys that didn't make any of the regular varsity teams, they played in these winter leagues.
Right.
So I played with Les, and he actually said, "Hey, I got somebody I want to introduce you to. So, meet me at this at this address, and I'll introduce you." So, go there. It's in my neighborhood, right down the street from my house. Walk over there, and it's at the BRC, and it was Gil Reynolds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I played with him. He actually was the guy that actually actually taught me that I could be a good player, because by then I was like, again, 6'2", like 170. I was still, I was strong. So, and I could jump because of, being a track athlete. I could dunk off of 2 feet. I could dunk off of 1 foot. I can hold, the post. I was pretty strong, but he taught me like the fundamentals, and he taught me about, I don't know if you guys ever played for him or had any kind of interactions with him, but we used to do this. We used to run suicides, and his suicides were special because he used to put baseballs on the lines, and so you had to actually go to the line, you had to pick up the baseball, you had to run back, and you couldn't throw it to the guy at the end of the line. You actually had to hand it to him.
Mm-hmm.
So all of our suicides, you had to touch the line because you had to pick up the baseball.
Right.
Just little things like that, learning how to do things the right way, not, cutting any corners, because that drill sergeant thing with him was a big thing. And
He's not going to let you cut any corners. That's
Yeah.
why he brought the baseballs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's why he had the baseballs.
Yeah.
I still actually, with my conditioning classes, I have them do that now.
Wow. Nice. Nice. Nice.
So we're putting tennis balls on the lines, and to make sure that they have to bend over. But so he and then the second thing was I was a bit of a knothead, especially during this time. I was kind of like, I was one of these smart kids that was, grew up in kind of a not going to say an impoverished neighborhood, because I had a pretty middle class background, but there was a lot of crime, a lot of stuff going on in our neighborhood.
Mhm.
I was like, one of these smart kids that basically, kind of went back and forth between worlds, and then
Mm-hmm.
was on that side of the fence. So I would see some of that from time to time. But Gil was like one of these straight and narrow guys, and he actually wanted to actually have my parents come down because he wanted to send me to Laurinburg
Right. Right.
when I was when I was a sophomore going into my junior year, and telling my parents, that I would, I'd graduate from college, and all this other stuff, and I'm like, military academy, being military academy. I mean, it's hard enough, it's hard enough for me to take orders from my father, which was, another story in itself. But now you want to send me to a military academy in the South, and this is after, we spent a summer in South Carolina at my aunt's place, and I was like, don't ever send me back here again. If you send
Well,
me back,
I live 25 minutes away from Longburg, so I know what it's like over there, man.
yeah, but I'm talking about the 70s.
Seven.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
that's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they decided, nah, we're not gonna do it. So I go into my junior year at Tech, and now I'm like 6'2", 6'3", 180 pounds, and I'm something to be, at least I think that I'm something to be reckoned with. And I try out for the team, and Les is there, George is there, Shelly is there. We had some decent cats, and I make the team. And I
Yeah,
think,
we had Breeze too. Breeze was on that team, Brian.
yep.
Right? Yeah.
And
So
Bologna.
Yeah, Tony Balogan was on that team
Tony
too.
Balogan,
Yeah.
who I wound up playing against him in when I was in England.
Yeah.
But, I was like, I figured I finally arrived. I made the team, right? And so I play, the half of the season, right? First half of the season. And of course, I'm this knucklehead. I'm still trying to figure out, what the hell I'm here for.
Right.
What's my purpose here? I'm fighting with my parents. I'm fighting with my dad because he's like one of these my way, the highway people. You know, I've got a lot of stuff going on, and it's just it was a kind of confusing time for me. But I at the time I always had this, this feeling that I was smarter than the system, that I could beat the system.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you remember, Les, but they had this thing where if you attendance requirement, that if you miss like 2% of your classes, they'd have to mark you down a grade.
Yeah.
And you know, I didn't mind doing the work, but I had a thing about going to class, you
Hmm.
know, because it was too much. It was always, you know, something else going on, you know, whether it was I discovered girls and, you know, I was meeting girls, you know, in the hallways of tech, you know, or, you know, somebody was hanging out, you know, they're playing hooky, you know. So I had a social studies class with this guy named his Mr. Cressa. He was a cool guy. And you know, I had, you know, decent marks in all my tests, but I really didn't like sitting there, you know, watching him or, you know, listening to him because I'd already read the chapters. And so he taught me a lesson because, you know, after that first third, right, he, I get my grade from him because I'm like skirting. I'm just like barely passing. I've got a C average,
Hmm.
and which is enough to keep me playing. And he like gives me a D on this like in this third or a nine. It wasn't a D. They didn't give D's, and it was like a 65 or something. That's was
Right,
it was
right.
a number system. And I go to him, I go, you know, Mr. Cressy, you know, I do all the work, right? I just can't come to class, right? Well, you know the policy. He like tells me there's nothing I can do about this. Is the policy. Says you'll look back at this at some point and realize that I did you a favor.
Wow. Wow.
Was that true?
Actually, it was.
Hmm.
Okay.
Actually, it was. You know, it was. I didn't learn the lesson quite the way I should have learned it, but he did. So I'm ineligible. So I'm done for the year. You know, after playing, you know, the first half of the year, which I didn't do too bad. I mean, I was, you know, learning how to play varsity basketball. You know, and plus I played with Gil. I played with him during the summer. You know, we played in Citywide up in Manhattan. We played Brevoort. You know, I had our team was this was juniors too. So our team was Anthony Gill. We had Sid Green. We had Mo Sanford.
Hmm.
We had Jeff Thomas from Sheepstead Bay. Me, John Bradshaw, you know,
From
JB.
Jeff.
Yeah.
that played at Tech for a
That's
while.
right. JB on, yeah, he played with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went the same route I did, but he decided after a while he was going to go because he wasn't going to be able to graduate.
Hmm.
So that was our summer league team, and we played against, you know, Riverside. We played against Brooklyn USA. We played against, you know, most of the top guys in the city, and I held my own. So I didn't have any issues, but you know, it kind of hurt me that, you know, I got declared academically ineligible. So, you know, I'm done. So I wind up getting picked up by Louis Dalmeda. He was just starting the Gauchos, you know.
Hmm.
So I wound up playing for him for the remainder of the year, and you know, he would come to my house, come pick me up, and you know, it wasn't too bad of a deal. But going into my senior year, you know, I miss a class, so I'm ineligible the first half of my senior year
Hmm.
at Tech, so I can't play. So again, you know, I wind up pulling it together and getting the second half and playing the second half of the year, and didn't do too bad. But again, I'm thinking, you know, what am I going to do? You know, I've got these two halves of seasons. I've got basically a C average. You know, what am I going to do as far as, you know, trying to you know, go to college? Because, you know, my father had made it pretty clear. You know, you got three options. You know, you're either going to get a job, you're going to go to college, or you're going to go into the military. So you got, yeah,
The usual three.
I'm sure
Yeah.
you guys heard them same options,
Yeah.
you know. So, and even though, I mean, I had a good work ethic, I didn't have any problems with, with working. I worked every summer, but I saw like most of the guys that lived in my neighborhood, they were going into the military, they were going into the army,
Mm-hmm.
but I still had my my sights kind of set on going to college. So, and about that time, we we actually moved. It's like halfway through my senior year, we moved from Brooklyn out to Long Island, and probably was the best thing that happened for me at that time because I, I had spent uh, the second half of the year basically commuting from Long Island into the city to go to Tech because I was playing,
Mm-hmm.
playing basketball and getting home late. It was just killing me. It was a 2 hour ride into the city from Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're trying to catch the A train to go out to go out to Queens, and then catch this bus that went
Damn.
from Queens all the way down the Hempstead Turnpike, passed through Belmont, through Franklin Square, all the way to Hempstead.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, hey, I'm I think I'm just going to transfer for my last six months of school. So I told my parents, hey, I think I'm going to transfer, and lo and behold, right, instead of me having to take a bus to school or a train to school, the school bus came right outside our door, and I hopped out of my house and onto the school bus, and it took me to school every day for the last
Mm-hmm.
6 months. And so I wound up graduating from Uniondale High instead of
Okay.
graduating from Tech. Even though I went 4 years, I wasn't going to graduate that year. I would have had to go another year at Tech in order to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
But what it what I wound up doing is getting my 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 high school diploma. It allowed me to have some options as far as going to 4 year school, going to a college.
Right.
So Les was helping me with that. Louis wasn't really too much. The Gauchos weren't helping me too much with that because they had all these other guys that were all Americans, the Larry Washingtons, and the Gary Springers, those guys, they were basically, all Americans and all city guys, and I was kind of a low tier guy. So Les helped me. He introduced me to Sam Stern
Mm. Oh
uh,
yeah, no Sam. Mm-hmm.
at New York Tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
And New York Tech was literally down the street from our house. Like my family now, we live. Our house is in the back of Hofstra, and
Right. Yep. Yep.
right next to where the Nassau Coliseum used to be.
Mhm.
Yeah. Where the Nets played. Yep.
And then right across the bridge is Old Westbury, where New York Tech was.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, I gave him my transcripts, and he's seen all the classes I had. I said, well, what do you want to study? And I told him, well, I'm thinking about studying architecture or something uh, of that ilk. So he put me into a general studies course, gave me a scholarship. Next thing you know, I'm taking classes at Tech, and I still wasn't like happy, because I was living at home. Me and my dad were beefing, and now I'm 17. I'm a full 6'5", 200 pounds, and I'm think I'm all that now.
You feeling yourself.
I'm feel, Well, I was feeling myself all until one night when he caught me. He caught me. You know, we all have that one moment where we feel ourselves a little bit too much, and our fathers have to put us into place.
Yeah,
So he
been
put
there. Yep.
yeah, he put me into place.
Not me, man. I run too fast. I ran.
Yeah, I wish I would have been able to run, but he grabbed me up so fast. I was and then he punched me too.
Mm,
Before he could punch me again, my mother jumped on his back, told him not to punch me again.
mm,
But so, you know, I was telling Les, hey, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if if this is going to be where I need to be. Even though I was holding my own with these New York Tech guys, and I was a freshman. There was Kelvin.
mm-hmm.
You know, there's Clyde. There's Bones. You know,
Larry McCarden.
Larry McCartan. I'm scrimmaging with all these guys, and I'm holding my own. And these guys are, they're upperclassmen. So, I I'm thinking if I would have stayed. I mean, I listened to Lance and him talk about the his experience at Tech and how you know uh, he thought Sam had actually was like kind of like bankrolling, stacking players, just in case they basically, somebody fails, he's got backup. But I never really felt that with him. But so Les basically uh, told me, hey, I got this guy coming in, to New York. He's from Seattle University, and he's looking for players. So would you be interested in trying out for him? So I go, yeah, man. Didn't tell anybody anything. So the guy's name was Jack Shallow, and he was a coach at Seattle University, and they were Division One. They played in the West Coast Athletic Conference against St.
Mm-hmm.
Mary's and San Francisco. So I show up at the BRC, and it's me. It's a guy named I want to say Gary Edwards or I don't know if it was Pete Edwards, but Gary Edwards, about 6'7", forward, and another guy named Mike Simmons, point guard, played at Boys High, and they put us through the paces, 3-man weave, we're playing one-on-one against each other, running through some drills, kind of Gil put us through our paces for about an hour, and afterwards, he pulls me to the side, says, "Hey, I like your game. What's your grade point average like?" I said, "I'm probably B, C. I'm not gonna lie to you about that." He goes, "Well, would you have any problem going to a community college?"
Mm.
And I said, "No. Where is it?" And he goes, "Well, Bellevue." So you know, he said, "Here's my number, talk to your family about it, and then, contact me and we'll try to get you, we'll get you set up if you decide you want to do it." So I went home, you know, first thing I did was go get the encyclopedia out and look up Washington State and see where Seattle was,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I find out, Seattle is, is the state separated by this mountain range called the Cascades. And on the western side of the state, basically it rains a lot. On the eastern side of the state, it snows a lot in the wintertime and it's hot during the summertime. I was like, this might not be a bad spot. Doesn't snow because we had just dug out of the storm of the century. There were people. My father had me, and that was another thing. My father gets we got 5 feet of snow outside, right? So I hear knock on my door. The first time I ever had my own room, right? Open the door and he's standing there with a freaking shovel, saying, "Go dig us out."
Wow.
Get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody else. My brother is too small. My sister's too small. He's got a bad back. So I'm out there, digging us out of this 5 feet of snow, cursing, every damn, never gonna live. No, ever. Fuck again. So when I told my parents, hey, I'm thinking about going to junior college in Seattle. And my mother is like, mortified, like, what? But you go to school here. And I'm like, I'm not really happy right now. I'm not really happy here. I think I need to, do this. I need to go.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was a little, he was skeptical. He was like, you got to be like your cousins who, they've gone to school, they didn't even last a year before they were back. But if that's what you want to do, that's fine.
Mm.
You'll be back, was his final words. And my parents were still pretty young. I mean, my mother had me when she was 17, so they were still pretty young and very, they were still learning how to be parents, and how to
I got you.
be parents. But they were supportive enough to basically buy me a one-way plane ticket to Seattle.
Mm.
They helped me pack up all my stuff in a steamer trunk back when you could still take a steamer trunk. They didn't
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yep.
and they took me to the airport, and I left with Mike. I met Mike at the airport, and we took that 5-hour plane flight to Seattle. And told Stearns I was leaving. Just like
Oh,
disappeared.
New York. Okay.
Just ghosted him, right? And it was actually something that I wound up, I wound up regretting, and I wound up apologizing to him through uh, through Clyde of all people, because
Wow.
him and Clyde were tight,
Yeah.
because he was pissed when he found out that I was gone. When he found out that I had left, he was pissed.
Mm.
I mean, to the point where he was thinking about, like, the fact that I'd gone to a community college was really the only thing that saved me, because I didn't go to another 4-year school. I went to a community college.
Right.
So I wound up squashing with him and telling him, look, I apologize to you. I should have told you. I had a lot of things going on. I'm in my 50s, when I did this.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And this was, kind of the advent of Facebook, because it allowed me to connect with Clyde, who I hadn't seen for years through Facebook, just like you. I hadn't seen you. So, but I felt that it was it's kind of the right thing to do.
Nice. Nice.
As far
Nice.
as treating things the way they're supposed to be treated. You need to be about business, and you need to be, a man about it. If you got a certain feeling about something, you make your feelings known, and the reasons why.
Mhm.
So here I am. We went out to Bellevue, which was total culture shock. You know, Bellevue was like this, one stoplight town. Back then. Seattle was less than 1 million people lived in Seattle. Bellevue was a suburb of Seattle. Like when you drove through Bellevue, you went through Bellevue to Issaquah, and then you're up in the Cascade Mountains. That's how remote it was. So and our coach, who had been he had been the coach uh, at Bellevue Community College since its inception in '67. So, and they had like won the first they had won the first state junior college tournament back in '67. So he was a decent mind. I had talked to him beforehand. I had no idea about any of his philosophy, basketball philosophy. I mean, we back then, you really never asked people, about, what's your philosophy, or coach, what's your philosophy? Hey, you want me, I'm willing to come, and I'll figure it out from there. Now once you got there, and things, didn't kind of line up, then you had to figure it out. But we had not a great team, but we had a decent team. They had made the playoffs the year before, and they were looking for some decent freshmen. 2 years of I needed to get into a program where, first of all, I didn't have a lot of distractions, which is why I went to Bellevue.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, so I could actually work on my grades, so that I could be attractive to another school, and then also to work on my game, to get my name out there. So the first week I get there, I'm in the weight room, and he's actually like got me doing squats, and we're doing box jumps, we're doing all this kind of stuff that I'd never done before. We didn't even do that kind of stuff when I was running track at Tech. And again, I'm 6'5", 200, 205. So I'm a solid 17-year-old man child at this point. So, and I could dunk, I could stand underneath the basket, underneath it, and basically jump up and dunk it backwards with both hands, with two hands, off of one jump. So I'm pretty athletic, but I had to kind of learn basketball. Luckily, having been with Gil, he taught me plays. He taught me how structure. We used to run plays. We had an offense. So Ernie, who was my coach my first year, he was kind of the same kind of structure as Gil, but without the drill instructor aspect of it. And so, and then we had a dude that was a guy named Bester, who was he played for the Supersonics for a couple of years. Big black dude that kind of took me under his wing, and taught me. We used to play one-on-one after practice, and he wore me out for a little while till I started getting used to the physicality of his game, and then I started to be able to hold my own and even sometimes dominate with him. But the probably the biggest thing about going to Bellevue, besides it being a culture shock, we had this huge gym, and on Saturdays we used to have like open runs, during the not during the season, but during the summer, and we would have the pros come up because the Supersonics were there.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
So we had all these old Supersonics, actually new Supersonics. We had guys from Seattle University used to come out of there. University of Washington used to come out of there. They also, I don't know if you guys ever played, they have NCAA sanctioned summer leagues out here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I played in that for 2 years as well, and that used to have all the guys out that that were playing that were in college at the time. But these open runs with the pros, man, were like an eye opener, because I don't know if you guys ever knew, you remember Clint Richardson, that he played for Philadelphia.
Philly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's a Seattle University product, and
Mhm.
I was the guy that was going to take his spot because he was like a junior, senior. I think he was a senior. So they were talking about, me basically taking his spot, same size. I watched this dude take my guy, Mike, right? Grab it at the block, right? He did a drop step, a fake drop step to the right, and then drop step to the left, came up and dunked it on him, two hands. And I was like, these guys are, I mean, they can play. You always think, the West, the East Coast is just, where all the ball players are, but there are guys out here that could play. And I always tried to challenge myself to play against like these guys because I needed to know that I could play with them. It was a confidence thing for me.
Mhm.
So, so I go through my first year. Actually, kind of living on my own was another, revelation for me because I needed to grow up as as a man. And being 17, being away from home for the first time, it kind of it was an eye opener. Here's a so before my first game, right? We there's a whole another side of this, but within 3 weeks of me moving there, I was shacked up with one of the women's team members. So we're living in sin. She's got her own apartment and she's got a car, you know, and we liked each other. So I'm living with her. So she goes off to work one day, because she's got a little job, and I'm nervous because I'm about to play my first college game, and I decide I'm going to go downtown Seattle and basically just hang out, just kind of get some of the nerves out. So I take the bus down to downtown, you know, get the nerves out,
Mhm.
and I'm coming back home. I don't know if you guys have ever been, any of you guys have been to Seattle, but there's you know there's a bunch of main streets, like at the closer you get to Pike Place Market, they're like, and there's 3 or 4 lanes. So to catch the bus, I had to cross the street, and I decided to cross in the middle of the street. So I cross the street, and I pass behind this Seattle PD car, patrol car.
Mhm.
Dude stops in the middle of the street, backs up, and says, you know, "Hey, what are you doing?" I go, "I'm crossing the street."
Mhm.
He goes, "Well, you're jaywalking." And he actually got out of his car, and says, "Hey, what, you have ID on you?" I go, "Nah, man, I don't have any ID." And
Mhm.
he took me to jail.
What?
Took me took me to jail, right?
Welcome to Seattle.
I hadn't even been to Seattle. I've been in Seattle for like just a little over a month,
Hmm.
right? And I'm already sitting in the back of a patrol car, which I'd never in my life been
Mhm.
in the back of a patrol car. And I'm calling my coach, to basically tell him, "Hey, I'm downtown in the at the police department." And he's like, "What? What did you do?" And like, "You haven't even been here for a month." And I go, "Coach, I didn't do anything. I was walking across the street. I got nervous, before the game. I decided to walk some of this energy off. And this guy caught me for jaywalking. He said he caught me for jaywalking. He goes, "Jaywalking? You were just crossing the street?" I go, "Yeah." So he says, "Is the policeman there?" Because they had me in like a little holding cell.
Mhm.
And so I go, "Yeah." So the cop's standing there. So I give the cop the phone, and I hear him talking to the cop, and the cop's going, "Yeah, yeah, right." I don't know. I wasn't the arresting officer, and I could hear my coach's voice getting louder and louder and louder.
Mm.
Or he's cursing his guy. You guys don't have anything else better to do but to stop crossing the street. Was he running? Was he just walking? Did he have anything in his hands? He's like, cussing. I'll be down there in a little while. And he drove all the way from Bellevue down to pick me up. And he's still yelling at the cops, and that kind of like, when we left, that kind of endeared me to him because,
Mm.
he was willing to fight for me, even though, I mean, and he apologized to me, about, yelling at me, thinking that I had done something. And so I was willing to like run through a wall for that guy. And, my first year wasn't too bad. I mean, I averaged 17 and 9, 17 and 9. And I had some decent games against some guys, had some 30-point games, but it was still, I was still like learning,
Mm.
at least to me. And I wasn't gonna, I hadn't heard anything about any offers or anything like that. Well, my coach decided he decided he wanted to take a sabbatical because he was like, he was running through exhaustion because he really hadn't taken a break since he had opened up the program, and he wanted me to sit out a year. And
Mm.
like, coach, I don't know if I could do that because, I'm first of all, I didn't know if I would stick with it, just knowing me as a hold on a second. Just knowing me as a the 17, 18-year-old that I was, and knowing I was still a little bit of a knucklehead, I could just see myself getting distracted and basically, you know, winding up back in New York again. So I was like really torn. And he was like, he didn't really tell me this until later, after I had already made my choices, and we were sitting around, talking one day, and he tells me, if you had sat out that next year, you know, I was going to swing you back to, the guard, and I already had a place for you to go. And I go, you did? Well, where were you, where were you going to take or send me?
Mm.
I go, I was going to send you to Houston, University of Houston,
Wow.
in
Wow.
with Guy Lewis when he was the coach there, with Hakeem actually hadn't
Mm.
got there yet.
Mm-hmm.
But they had Larry Michaud, who was a
Right.
All
Mr.
American,
Mean.
right? They had Clyde was there,
Mm.
right? They had Lyndon Rose. They had a squad there. So, but I mean, I probably would have gone because I knew at that point that I could compete with those guys. Because I was playing against pros while I was up there. But I ultimately decided not to sit out and to continue with my sophomore year. And while he sat out for that year, he brought in his friend to basically coach, who was actually had been his assistant a couple of years ago, and he was actually the high school coach, high school and junior high coach, basketball coach, and he coached a bunch of other sports. But and his name was Bruce Brown, and I didn't know anything about him at all until until he showed up to practice, and I liked him because he had a positive attitude. Really didn't know anything about his basketball thing. We had lost most of the, the people from our from my freshman year. They were all sophomores, and so we almost had like a brand new team. It was just me, Mike. We had this kid that we had gotten from New York that was a friend of Mike's, uh, named Mark Struther, who had lost both of his parents and needed a place to go. 6'5" kid, but pretty much everybody else was freshmen and a couple of walk-ons, and it was it was a little interesting, that first that did after that first practice, because every day, you know, it's like I stopped playing basketball. Like I stopped knowing how to play basketball because every time he would say something, Lucas, what are you doing? Lucas, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? What are you doing here? What's going on here?
Hmm.
Like I couldn't learn his system, right? So I was starting to like, doubt myself after, thinking that I had, figured out how to play. So, but I was still working hard. I was still basically, playing as hard as I could. And one day we're in practice and he's just on me like every time I touch the ball, he is on me, right? And so I go through practice. It's not like I haven't had, tough coaching. You play for Gil,
Absolutely. Yep. Mm-hmm.
you know how to take, hard practices. And the next day I go up to his office, and I close the door and I sit down and I tell him, am I really that bad? Have I like completely like lost my ability to play basketball? And he looks at me, and here's this another like life lesson that I carry on and basically try to teach the kids that I encounter. And he goes, there's nothing wrong with the way you play. Yeah, you need some coaching from time to time, but if I can't coach you, you're my best player, right? Mm-hmm. If I can't coach you, you think these other kids are going to listen to anything that I say if I don't hold you to a higher standard? And, from that point on, it clicked, and I never had any issue with him about my play. Now, as far as my behavior, that basically we had some issues, but that was because I was one of these guys that wanted to win so bad that I'd get upset if the ref made a freaking bad call or called a foul on me or something. And one particular game, it cost us the game because we were winning, and ref basically called some ticky tack foul on me, and I had the ball, and so I'm thinking in my mind, I'm just gonna hand it to him, and the devil's on this shoulder, on this shoulder, right?
Yeah.
The angel's saying, hand him the ball, right? The devil's saying, throw it at him. And the devil won that day. And I didn't throw it at him, but I gave him a hard little underhand, and he caught the ball and he looked at me and he teed me up right there.
Mm-hmm.
He only gave me one. Coach sits me on the bench and he's looking at me. And I go, I know. I just knew what he was going to say. So we wound up having to have a little conversation about, when you don't think something you were foul or you fouled someone, or if you don't think the call is right, I want you to hold your hand up. If you don't think it's right, keep your hand down. That'll be my acknowledgement, and I'll deal with the rest from there.
Mm-hmm.
So he basically, by then, since we had that little issue in the beginning of the year, I was basically playing probably some of my, I got all out of my system. I was able to relax and play the way I was supposed to play, and I wound up, we wound up. First of all, we finished fifth. I was just talking to somebody about this. We finished fifth in our conference, and we had to win 3 games on teams that had beat us on the road to make it to the States. By then, was having pretty good success. I was averaging 23 and 12. So, and I had a 44 point, 25 rebound game, during the season. So I was getting some notoriety, but the thing that was holding me back was, people thought I was a bad guy. They thought I was like this, this problem child, and they didn't want to they saw the talent, but they also saw the outbursts because again, I wanted to win. I didn't come out this far to be a guy that didn't didn't play hard. I didn't accept guys around me not playing hard. I always led by example. So, and if you took me out the game, it wasn't going to be because, it was because I either fouled out or I did something that was a bonehead play that I needed to sit down. But I basically tried to stay out as much as I could because they needed me to play. So wound up having to win 3 games in a row, which we did. And we actually came together as a team. And we wound up going to state. And we were like one of the lowest ranked teams in state. And
so Kevin, did you guys compete with the California junior college system?
no, Washington State had their own, just like California had their own.
Wow. So y'all didn't even participate in the regular junior college championships as well?
Nope.
I did not know that, man. Ain't that something, man?
They had their own. California had their own. I think Texas actually participated in the National Junior College Championship. And to tell you the truth, if I thought that we would, because because I had already thought that the junior college championships was like a national. It was all 50 states, but there were states that actually had their own
right. Mm-hmm.
Own
Yeah,
playoff.
as far as I knew, it was only California, but I didn't know Seattle was one of them as well.
Yeah, actually, Washington had some pretty decent players. I mean, we actually played Ricky Pierce, who
yes, I know Ricky Pierce. Yeah,
he played at Rice. He went to Walla Walla Community College, and the game that he had against us, he had like 20 and 15. So, and there were some other guys that actually played that were wound up being decent pros and decent collegiate players. So it was still pretty competitive. We wound up actually finishing 3rd that year. We got jerked out of the semifinal game because we weren't supposed to be there in the first place. And we ran out this team that was a higher seed than us on our first game, and the second game the fix was in, man. Freaking refs basically jerked us like we're ahead. We're ahead in this game, and I know you guys know you've been there before. Standing there, right, catch the ball off the wing, right. Turn and face the guy, right? And had never put it on the ground. Take my first dribble. I hear the whistle, beep. Turn around and
walking.
Going.
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
Turn around the next play. I'm coming up the floor, right? Basically turn, right? Stop, right? And my defender's in front of me, right? Never even came in contact with him, right? He falls back, right? Like I had hit him, and there's a charge. And my coach is on the sideline. He is like beside himself, right? So anyway, we wound up losing that game on it was kind of a freak shot. Basically, the guy shoots a free throw and the free throw hits the rim in such an ugly way that it bounces out where I couldn't even get it as high as I jumped. And they wound up winning by 2 points or something like that.
Mm.
But our coach basically chased this guy into the freaking locker room.
Yeah.
Try to get to him, but by then it was too late.
Mm.
So we wound up winning the third place game, and we came in third that year, and I was the regional MVP for for Washington for that for that class.
Mm.
By then I was starting to get I was starting to get offers. I had visits. Actually, during a couple of tournaments, I had scout from Georgetown come talk to me. I had Washington, basically University of Washington, which I wanted to go to Washington. I wanted to go to to play in the Pac-10, and they're interested in me, but again, my reputation was had kind of preceded me, and I would go up there actually during the when we were done with the season. They'd have their spring workouts, so I was going up there every week, and playing with these guys. And that's when they had Lorenzo Romar was there.
Mm-hmm.
They had James Edwards. He was another
okay. Mm-hmm.
another guy. I mean, I played against these guys during the summer. We played in the NCAA sanctioned league. There was a guy, I don't know if you remember, his name was Jawan Oldham.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He was another Seattle University guy.
Mm.
I used to play against these guys all the time, man.
Mm.
But so I was starting to get some notoriety, and I actually even had, out of the blue, just another side story, but out of the blue, uh, Louis Carnesecca called me from St. John's, and they actually invited me home for a visit. During spring break, I went home because it was right down the street from my house, and we basically I went and took a visit at St. John's. Sat in his office. Basically they showed me the facilities, the whole 9 yards, and this was like right before they got, Chris Mullin was still in high school. I think Walter Berry was still like in high school or thinking about coming there. So they had some guys, but they're all still just coming together. And he wanted me really bad. I mean, to the point where he called my house and he was like, "Hey, I've got a scholarship for you. Do you want to come?" And the only caveat was I had to live at home for the first part of the year. And I'd been on my own for so long. This is that, me actually not being fully all there, but you're going to have to live at home for the first half because we don't have like, dorm set up for you for this particular time. And there's no place else for you to live. And I'd been on my own for so long that I couldn't bear thinking about living at home and living under my father's rule again.
That's kind of wild though, because they had like off-campus apartments for the team. Because I've been there.
But
I've been in there, so I know it's crazy, man. But I want to ask you a question and jump back for a while, back into your high school days. Like, what was it like, or at least not what was it like, but and I know I'm pretty sure probably Les was probably going to ask this question too, but what was like Gil's reaction, man, when you went and played with the Gauchos? Because as soon as you said that, I was kind of like the fury was going to come out,
he actually, I played for when I was a junior, and to tell you the truth, I don't remember.
Mm,
I'm sure I probably got some kind of smoke behind it, but he never. I don't remember him actually offering me a spot to play with their senior team.
mm,
You know, and I'm sure I was good enough to play again. Back during those like the years from my 15, 16, 17, you know, those years were like a blur. I
yeah.
had so much shit going on.
Yeah, because I know the opinions that like either with us with George and Gil, they didn't really take kindly to, the gauchos in Riverside. So when somebody was going to jump ship, there was usually like, definitely a couple of paragraphs being said by Gil, in a group setting, like you go and play for that guy over in the gauchos, and right away you're spewing, his feelings about that. So that's why I
But
was asking.
the thing is that I think what happened, now that I think about it, is the fact that I moved out to the island. So I wasn't living in East New York, right? Walking distance to the BRC anymore.
Mm.
Mm,
So that could have been just part of it, that I didn't, I wasn't, like within walking distance of of the gym anymore. So, and to tell you the truth, Louis he came to my house out in the island, to pick me up for the first time I ever played for him.
mm,
You know, and back then you're thinking, dude's driving one of those TR7s, Triumph TR7s, the wedge. He's got a wad full of cash.
Mm.
Takes me out to dinner, right? Gives me some,
sneakers, bags, uniforms.
I
Mm.
still have I still have my Gauchos jacket.
Wow. Wow. Mm.
You know? And
Oh
it was
man.
one of the original ones, one
Mm.
of the ones with just the blue with the orange bull on the back of it.
Hmm.
Those were the original ones.
Mm.
Little with the hood that came out of that was secluded in the
Yes.
so yeah. Yeah, I think it was just more about the fact that I moved out to I moved out to the island, and I
Hmm.
wasn't I wasn't in Brooklyn anymore.
Yeah.
So
That's
yo, man. After you left junior college, man, tell us about that.
Well, I was getting recruited, and like I said, I had Georgetown. They had actually had interest in me. St. John's, Idaho, Washington wanted me to come there, but they wanted me to walk on, right? Seattle University at the time, they had their program pretty much disbanded. They had their program dropped from Division 1 to Division 3.
Mm.
So my sophomore year, so they had brought in all these guys, my freshman year, and they just never gelled. There were a bunch of guys that were just looking to, trying to, become pros, and they just never gelled. And Shallow got fired. So the next time I saw him was actually the LA Summer Pro League. But I'd also had a conversation with Cal Poly, because my coach, the second year coach, he used to go down to Cal Poly every year, and for this physical education workshop that he was a PE teacher. So, and they would have this like these workshops for PE teachers, which is like a boondoggle. They'd spend a month down there. He'd take his whole family, and so they called me, and you know they arranged for me to have a visit. So I was the first guy that they had actually flown in years. That's how bad they wanted me,
Mm.
But so I decided to go to California for a weekend. It's San Luis Obispo. Getting out, it's April in Seattle, and it's still like nothing but clouds and rain. So get out leave out of SeaTac, right? And almost like just about the time you get out of Tacoma, all the clouds go away. And basically it's nothing but, nothing but blue skies and sun. And back then, I lived in Seattle when Mount St. Helens erupted.
Oh, okay.
You could actually see the damage from the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
But, I go down there, I take a little puddle jumper from from San Francisco to Cal Poly because it's in between San Francisco and Los Angeles, about halfway. And I get dropped off at the airport, right? And I'm waiting to see who's coming to pick me up, right? And this old VW bus rolls up to the whatchamacallit, the pickup line, right? And this guy in the driver's seat, right, looks like Glenn Campbell. He goes, "You Kevin Lucas?" I go, "Oh my God, are you serious? This is what they got to pick me up in, right?" I just came from St. John's where I'm eating steak and lobster for lunch. This guy's picking me up in this beat up Volkswagen bus.
What, like the Volkswagen bus from like Back to the Future, the Libyans?
Yeah, I'm serious. You ever seen them old Volkswagen?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
The two-tone model. To tell you the truth,
Yeah.
I could never knock it because when when I wound up going there, I go, hey coach Wood, I need to use your car, and he'd throw me the keys, and basically I'd take it if I had to go like somewhere, in town, and I don't want to ride my bike. He would give me his car and let me ride it because he knew I knew how to drive stick. So yeah, so he picks me up, and I go down to the campus, and it's kind of weird because I'm in California and I had never seen a palm tree before.
Mm.
So we roll up to the campus, right? And it's typical California, spread out campus, right? And it's April, everybody's in shorts, right? All the girls are in their little dolphin shorts, and sitting under palm trees, reading books and stuff. And I'm going, this might not be too bad.
You think?
So we go into the gym, and the gym is it's an old gym, right? Big, you look at those facilities and the facilities, they had at St. John's, and there's like no comparison, right? And the coach has this little postage stamp of an office, right? And there's two desks in there, right? It's two desks. The head coach's desk is in the front there, and the assistant coaches is over on here, and then off to the right is the tape machine with with his little video record or video player, so he could watch reel to reel tapes. That's his office, and so he takes me around campus, right? Brings me back. They of course all the brothers, they have a an advisor on staff that basically they hook up the brothers to, so that they could get a flavor for what campus is like, because all I ever saw when I was there was white people. So I'm like, are there black people here? Am I going to be the only one? But so he goes, no, there's plenty of black people here. So he hooks me up with Walt, who was the academic advisor. And Walt kind of lays the land. He goes, yeah, there's not too many of of us here, but the ones that are here are pretty significant, and they want you really badly. They really want you bad because they had these guys that they had made the playoffs the year before, but they really didn't have a lot of like athleticism. They were a really good team. They were like top, led the nation in defense, scoring defense for the year before. So, but they really didn't have like an offensive punch. So, so we I'll listen to what he said. He said, "Hey, we're gonna play. They're gonna play tonight. They want you over here at the gym." So went to the gym. Met most of the guys that I hadn't met already, and you know, we played some hoop. And they had this point guard who was the conference MVP the year before. 5'10" point guard that was a conference MVP. Dude averaged 10 assists a game. And he was like a white version of the guy that I had played with in junior college, Mike. And, you know, I've always been able to, and it's one of the things I learned from Gil, playing with Gil, finding seams, finding places, keeping your hands up, right? Being able to move, eye contact, that kind of stuff to get in the position to score. And this guy was like one of the best guys I had ever seen as far as getting me the ball where I could do something with it, So, I was already vibing with him. And they had some decent guys, but nobody that could really like, that I would say stood out to the point where, I was like, these guys are, better than me. So their strongest guy, right, was the first series, right? I get a a seal where I basically just sealed him on the block, sat down on him and basically called for the ball. And he was like, he's trying to push me and he couldn't push me. And I got it, right? And I turned on him and shot a little jumper over him. And he like looked at me and it's like, what are you are you real? Are you because I had a really good post game, right? If I got you on the box and I sat my ass on you, you weren't going anywhere. And I'm 205, got wide shoulders, big legs. I can jump. I got a nice little mid-range game, right? I know how to drop step. So, it was actually, I was really considering coming here. The thing that basically kind of sealed it, the last game of the day, right? Remember how in the old days, you'd grab a rebound, bang it off off the backboard. So I go up for a rebound. I'm banging off the backboard, basically give a couple of elbows, right? One of their guys is trying to like knock the ball out from underneath me, and he catches my bow, splits his eye open, right, and basically, the game has to end, and he has to go to the hospital. So for like he had to have 8 stitches under his eye. So by the time
you left your mark
in more ways than one. So he basically he calls me the next day when I get home and says, the first thing I says is, how's Mike? How's his eye? He goes, well, he had to have 8 stitches. And he says he'll forgive you if you come and sign with us. So that wasn't necessarily my reason for signing, but I decided to sign with them because it was, again, I wanted some place where I didn't have a lot of distractions. I could kind of focus on basketball. I could focus on getting my education because, I'm thinking, yeah, I could possibly go to the NBA, but it was more important for me and my family, from my mother's, standpoint, for me to basically, for me to to get my education. So
Mm.
if basketball worked out, then basketball worked out. But I needed to get that degree. So we I went there. We wound up my junior year. We wound up going to the Final Four. We were at large team.
Right.
We actually wound up swing. They actually swung us to New Jersey. We played in the East Regional against was it Clarion State and Mon something. I forget what the name of the team was or name of the university, but we wound up killing both teams we played in that regional, and then they swung us back home. We played a quarterfinal game at home against the University of New Hampshire, beat them, and then wound up playing in the Final Four in Springfield against Florida Southern and John Eberling.
And they
You know,
won it all, right?
yeah, and they probably wouldn't have won if I hadn't gotten into foul trouble. I got into foul trouble in the first half of the game, and because I was playing really well in the playoffs, and
Didn't they have they had Felix, Les.
Felix Tertullian.
Yeah, Felix was on that team.
that Joker got. He was another one of these guys, that would fall, just the early floppers. Give him, give him a jab step, and he flops back. Right? They call a foul. They call it an offensive foul on me. So yeah, so I wound up actually that game I wound up fouling out. I only had 7 points out of the game, and we lost by like 3 to them. Matter of fact, I opened up that game dunking on Everling off of a one of my guys shot off the side. I grabbed the rebound, took one step, and he jumped, and I flushed.
He was a
So,
good player too, man.
oh,
He was a good player.
he was an outstanding player.
Yeah.
We actually,
I believe it or not, I got him too. I did. I'm serious. Right at LI because we played them, and I got him. My buddy Gerard gave me a nice bounce pass to the hoop, and I got him. We beat them in overtime. It was like damn near like 130 something and 120 something. It was offensive fest, man. But he was a good player, man. They had a good team. They
he
had a
was a
good
player
team.
of the year for like 2 years.
Yeah.
He wound up playing. I wound up seeing him again at in the LA Summer Pro League, and we actually no, actually it was the NABC All Star game because we both wound up playing in the. I was on the East, and he was on the. I mean, I was on the West, and he was on the East. We were the only two Division II players to play in that game.
Mm. Well, what did his career end up like after school? I mean, did you hear anything?
Yeah, he was like he played in Italy for years.
I figured as much because nothing happened domestically for him.
Yeah, because he was a tweener. I mean, the dude, he was 6'8". He was a 6'8" post player, right? Didn't really have an outside game, but if he got you on the block, he caught a couple of our guys basically on the block and dunked on him, two-hand dunked on him. But yeah, he was something in Italy. He played there for quite a while.
And what was the competition like in your conference that you played in? Were they like pretty, good competition as well?
Our competition in this Division II, but it was competitive, and we played Thursday. No, we played Friday, Saturday, and depending on where we were, we went as far down as Southern California. So sometimes we would have to, take a 4-hour drive for our games, and they had, it was pretty much all Southern California guys. But we also had, there was a school in Bakersfield, there was a school in Orange County, there was Riverside, Poly Pomona. There was LA, and Cal State Dominguez Hills, which had all the Compton guys, all of the the Dorsey guys, all the guys that didn't go to didn't go Division 1, they went to these schools.
Yeah.
So I was actually, believe it or not, I was the only black guy on a basketball team.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow.
2 years.
Wow.
Two,
But
two
it's just really incredible that there's so many colleges that it's a fairly decent level of competition throughout the conferences for all. I mean, well, once Division 1, obviously, but Division 2 and 3, and even junior college. There's so many colleges, even just in California, that that you can have competitive experiences in college with good teams. You really can, you know.
Even back then, if you could play, they would find
Yeah, that's
you.
right.
If you
Yeah.
played, there would be somebody, some scout that basically would find you and
Well,
would
look at your connection. Look how you got over to California. It's like, I mean, I'm not going to say it's unheard of, but like a connection from a connection from a connection, and you got people like Rodney Parker that had all, guys from Brooklyn all in California playing in the JUCO system and, Division 1, 2, and 3 schools. So it's just incredible, man, that, like you said, if you're out there, they'll find you.
Yo, especially back then though, because you think about
Yeah.
now with the communication level, it's a lot easier. But it was a word of mouth, man.
Yeah, yeah, and not well, yeah, Les, you're 100% right, but it was trusted word of mouth. It's like if
Right.
I said to you, Kevin, "Hey, man, I know this guy Les Miller," like you're gonna jump on it because you trust where the information is coming from, you
yeah.
know, and that gave us all opportunities to do whatever we did, and that's the great part of it all.
Without those opportunities and without those connections, I probably would have stayed at Tech, and who knows what would have happened.
Right.
Knowing me, I would have probably, knowing that I wanted to play, I would have competed and basically played, maybe helped them win a national championship. But
Mm.
how shoulda, coulda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still
But I
wound
don't
up.
even but I don't even look at it like that, Kev, when it comes to like any one of guys I know who's had an experience playing, and it's like the first part is true, coulda. And so you did it. And that next step, wherever it was, there were paths, like you just said. Like there was and we all were just saying there's so many different, connections that no matter what path that you took, if you stayed on at least I'm going to get my education and you're honing your skills of the sport, that the opportunity is going to be to some degree, most side on a positive side, experience. It's not going to be negative. You're going to get a chance to show what you can do. Not too many people get left off the bus when it comes to playing sports at the collegiate level if you're decent. They'll, because like you said, they'll find you. You know,
Yep.
yeah.
So that was my junior year. My senior year, I had a better year. I averaged 12 and 5 my junior year. My senior year, I wound up averaging 19, almost 20 and 7. So, and I started getting some, like, rumors. Scouts were coming to my games because for a while we were actually we were number 1 in the nation, at least in Division 2.
Mm.
We were 10-0, and we were going through some, and we were high. I think we were like 1 or 2 in scoring defense. But we had played against Division 2 schools. I held my own there. We wound up going back to the playoffs again. We missed going to the regionals again. That's another. There's so many, like, stories, man, that intertwined stories. We had a guy that basically was played on my team that's serving life in San Quentin.
Damn.
Yeah, because he killed his wife.
What?
Killed his wife in an insurance scheme, but he wound up getting into a fight during our final game, our regional final game, and this team that we were beating, they get pissed off and they come back and beat us by 2. When if he doesn't have this fight, we basically go off and we get to the regionals again. I get a chance to get to, my second Final Four in a row.
Mm.
But so, I had a pretty good season. We had a good season as a team. We were 24-8. And, then I'm starting to think about, maybe I'll get a chance to get drafted because at the time they had seven rounds of the draft.
Right.
And I never didn't get drafted, even though I had people telling me that I was going to get drafted. So I went back to school. I went to summer school. I was working in a freaking ice factory and going to summer school, taking calculus, and thinking my dreams of basketball were over. And I get a call from my agent, and he tells me, "Hey, I've got you set up to play in the LA Summer Pro League with the Lakers." And I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, in next week." So I've been not even thinking about basketball. I mean, I may have picked up a basketball maybe twice, since since I didn't get drafted. And I had to get myself in shape to go play in this LA Summer Pro League, and that was when there was only one Summer Pro League, and it was at Loyola Marymount. And that was when they had just drafted Worthy, and they had all their other draft choices. Of course, he wasn't there, but all their other draft choices were there, and that was an experience. Just being there. We had, I don't know if you remember their team from that year that they won the championship, but they had, Rambis. They had this guy named Clay Johnson. They had another guy named Mike McGee. All those guys wound up being on our summer league team. So, along with the draft choices. So, the other thing that they did, they wound up taking me and moving me from small forward to point guard. Never played point guard in my life, right? But now I'm playing point guard, and I'm going up against guys like Darnell Valentine. Muggsy Bogues before Muggsy Bogues, and Danny Calandrio from Seton Hall.
Seton Hall.
Yeah, it's who I played against him in England. And it took me some games to basically get, first of all, now I'm watching I'm playing with all these guys that I've been watching on TV. Now granted, I had already kind of shown that I could play with them when I played in this NABC All-Star game. It was the NABC All-Star game. I don't know if they still have it, but it used to be a college All-Star game that they had in between the Final Four, or at the Final Four. We were actually the 1982 was the year, and they actually had the Final Four in New Orleans. It was the year that Jordan hit the shot. They actually had Georgetown, Louisville, Houston, and North Carolina for the Final Four teams. But I was one of the 2 Division II guys that played in this game, and we had, I don't know if you know, Fat Lever.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had Rod Higgins. We had a bunch of dudes that basically, wound up playing in the NBA. And on the other side, they had Russ Shaney, Bill Garnett. Actually, even my roommate, who was Fred Roberts from BYU.
Boston.
Played at Boston.
Yeah, he played for Boston.
Yeah, crazy dude. For a
yes.
For a woman.
Yeah.
Didn't he play he played with Danny Ainge?
Yeah, he played with Ainge.
Yeah.
But I had a decent game. I had 11 points and 5 rebounds, 5 assists. I played decent, so I figured I had some kind of shot. But now I'm playing with these guys that I've watched on TV, and now I've got in a position that I never played before. So now I've got to like change and actually practice and basically get myself into ball handling mode where I'm basically running a team. And it was a pretty different and difficult transition. I think as I got into it and played more, actually I got better at it, but not enough to basically stick with the team. But it was a good experience.
That's hard. That's hard to do, man. That's really hard to do because it's funny because you'll show flashes of being able to handle it because you're learning it, but like those flashes don't come as often as they should, and they're kind of discouraging because it's kind of like, man, put me back at my normal position. You know what I mean? And it's kind of tough, man. I have to deal with that.
Yeah, it was,
Um,
but it told me the things that I needed to work on if I was going to try again. I mean, shit, I was at the time I was 20, 22, so I wasn't even 22. I was 20, 21.
Mm.
So my birthday wasn't until December. So I went back home and actually I didn't even go back home. Home was San Luis Obispo. Went back there and, I got a decent deal with a booster that basically helped me. They gave me free room and board while I was going to school. And I took all my hard classes because when I transferred to Poly, when I
Mm.
transferred to Poly, I had I'd switched majors. So I switched from communications to business, and so I had to pretty much start over like a freshman. And I took my only caveat of me staying there free room and board was that I had to take 18 units minimum. So, and it was really the only way I was able to graduate because I
mm,
took all of my freaking hard classes that whole year. And by the time I was done, I was, I was on track. So, and they kicked me out. I got a little job and basically, finished my degree. But in the meantime, I wound up getting an opportunity to play in England, and that was an experience because I didn't think I really kind of thought I was going to be having to go on one of these like traveling travel teams over in Europe to basically play or try to get my agent to give me a free agent tryout, in back in LA Summer Pro League. But I had been handling the ball. I had been, working on my jumper. I was still, in good shape, playing in, rec leagues and stuff. So I felt like like I was ready to play. So, and actually, English basketball was pretty competitive. I mean, they had a lot of guys that had played in the NBA, had played in college. Peter Goodmanson, who I used to kill when he was up in at Washington, and Anthony Belogan, Nigel,
Right. Mm.
Nigel Lloyd. You know, there was a lot. Russell Saunders, who was like all time great. He was one of my guys. When him and Lefty.
Mr. New Mexico State, right? And it
yeah.
was New
May he
Mexico.
rest in peace.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he was a good dude. So I wound up going there for a year on a team that basically they had taken all of their stars and basically cut their payroll in half. I'm playing with a bunch of guys that they brought up from the juniors, and you know we had kind of held our own. It was an interesting year. You know, I still played pretty well. I had good numbers, but they didn't wind up bringing me back. So I went home again and basically said, well, I'm going to, try to work on my game, try to get myself another opportunity. And I wound up hurting my knee, and that was pretty much the end of my basketball career when it came to playing in the pros.
How did you
Mm,
feel about that?
It was it was definitely a hard pill to swallow because at the time I was playing probably the best basketball that I had ever played. I was handling the ball. We had just won what was called the Southern California Municipal Athletic Federation title. So it was all the rec leagues uh, from San Luis Obispo all the way down to San Diego, and you literally had to win, win or go home, win to advance. And we were playing games we beat teams from Compton, we beat teams from La Jolla, we beat every type of team that you could possibly imagine, and we didn't have anybody over 6'5".
Mm.
mm,
So we would just get guys, and we would press them, and we would run them, and you couldn't. There was no dunking, so you had to play defense. You had to be able to shoot the three. They had 3 point shooting,
mm.
and press up. And we had we had a couple of teams that had 2 6. I remember we played against one team that had 2 6'10" dudes. So I had to play a 6'10" dude the whole time, along with the other guy. And they got theirs, but they couldn't handle us outside, and
Yeah, that's the usual.
they tried to
Mm,
play zone the whole
Mm.
time. We just outshot them. I
mm.
was playing probably the best basketball I'd ever played, and
Mm.
I could handle the ball, I could shoot it. I had decent mid range, so I was actually set up to go on this tour with one of my guys that lived in town that played in Belgium for a bunch of years, and he was like they used to do these tour games where you go on exhibitions and play against club teams like you, Les. Where'd you play at?
I was in France.
Yeah, I know, but where?
It's Joff.
Yeah,
Écoutez en Nancy.
we played a we played an exhibition tour where basically we played games. We drove across the channel, and then we played 5 exhibition games. Gravelines, a team in Paris, and we played in a tournament in the south of France where there was Toulouse,
Yeah, Toulouse. Hmm.
and then another team I think called Tours.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and it was fun. It was the whole experience was fun, but
Mm.
I was really looking forward to trying to play in the NBA, get at least an opportunity to show that I'd learned something
Right.
out there playing with some dudes I should never have even been playing with. And this guy jumps in the air and basically loses his balance and then falls down and rolls into my leg and tears
Mm.
my MCL.
Oh,
Mm.
shit.
So
Damn.
so I was done. But
Mm.
I got my degree, so I went to work and I
How
started
would
playing
you
again.
how would you sum up or how your career went and from the early stages up to now? I mean, is there like a high level of disappointment involved, or you're satisfied with how it's went, and what would be your take on that?
Well, I mean, everybody's career, you always could think that you could have done more. There's all these things that you could say, well, I should have done this, I should have done that. But I mean, I'd I'd stack my career on, 80% of the people out there that have played college basketball. I've played every level. You know, I've been basketball's taken me to places that, I never thought I would ever go.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Actually, it's opened doors for me. It's actually allowed me to feed myself. It's actually allowed me to open businesses. You know, it's it's actually introduced me to people that, you know, I I knew but didn't know. Case in point, Paul Grady, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know I knew Paul Grady until we're playing in this Masters tournament on the same team for Canada. It's a Canadian team, and he's talking. Paul, right? He is talking more trash about, so you is this the same Kevin Lucas that was the MVP and so and so? I'm like, I'm looking at him. I don't know if you've ever. We played. It was my first year playing in the Masters tournament. For a while, I don't know if you guys have if you guys have ever experienced it, but when I got into my 30s, I like fell out of love with basketball.
Mm-hmm.
When I couldn't do any of the things that I used to do when I was in my 20s, and I just stopped playing, stopped doing all that stuff, and it I kind of I regret doing that because it really wasn't right, at least for me. And I always missed basketball whenever I would see people play. And, I wound up actually getting my love for basketball back by coaching. I got asked to coach a prep school, a private school, a bunch of silver spoon kids. And, it was an experience just, seeing kids that, had, some that had a love for basketball and had a joy about it, and actually trying to get them to understand the sacrifice and commitment that it takes to be, a not just a good teammate, but a good player, and to
Right.
play potential. And that love, actually got me I started coaching a rec league, with little kids,
Mm-hmm.
10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, then 12 and 13-year-olds, and then 14 to 17-year-olds. And by then, the love was full back, that same passion that I had that used to, get me to take my basketball and go shoot out in the back back of my building in the dark. Same thing that used to have me, running up the stairs in my building to build up my legs so I could, learn how to dunk. You
Yeah.
know, those types of that passion for the game, it came back. And so then I started, looking for places to play, an outlet for it.
Mm.
I found the Masters Basketball Association, and all of a sudden, there's guys out still playing at 50.
Yeah.
There's guys out playing at 55. There's still guys out playing at 60.
Yeah.
And so we were on the first team I played with, and so I've been playing in that league. I usually play every year. I haven't played in a couple of years. I'm probably going to make a comeback this year and play. But you get into shape. I still have both my knees. I still have both of my hips. So
Yeah.
I still work out regularly. So I'm in good enough shape to play. And it's grown man basketball. So you got a bunch of guys that can't jump anymore, can't run anymore, but they all have the
Yeah.
mental up
Yeah.
here.
Right.
Right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So as long as you have that and you can still shoot it, that's the last thing to go is your jump shot. So we get together and play some ball, talk some stories, talk some shit, but it's the camaraderie,
Right. Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
same thing that we have. I mean, you just think about it. I mean, unless we played for maybe other than seeing each other in the lunchroom, our our camaraderie and our connection is basketball for those 2 years or the half of seasons that we played.
Yeah.
But here we are sitting, 50 years later, and still, it's just like we're sitting in the lunchroom again.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's the
That's
one
right.
thing that people, like we say all the time, it's like we could not see each other for years, but you start talking about the game with somebody and everything comes back, and
Mhm.
it's like you didn't miss a beat, and that camaraderie it can't be measured. It just happens, and it's a bond that it's nobody messes with it, so it's always going to be there.
Mhm.
Even after one of us passes, hypothetically speaking,
Yeah.
there's still going to be that bond because it just does something to you. And I'm pretty sure it happens in any kind of group environment. Like if you're an actor and go to and does sing every year and you end up doing plays, the same kind of interaction
Mhm.
happens of the memory and your experiences. And
Yeah.
but basketball is kind of unique still, even though there's
There's
that
a
common sense.
there's this generation is, or these last couple of generations, it's different.
Right.
Mhm.
It's different because guy once told me, that you know our generation, right? You be lucky. Oh, this current generation, they'll be lucky to find six guys to carry their casket, right?
Mm.
But
Well, six guys just to go to the funeral for all that matters.
yeah,
Seriously.
but
Yeah.
our generation and the connections that we made, that we actually forged through competition, through basically riding the train together to go to games and stuff. That stuff you can't buy that stuff.
No,
It's
not at all. What makes it even crazier because you mentioned about trying to five, 6 people carry a casket. When one of the basketball players of Brooklyn passes, the environment is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've gone to four of them, and there's been many more, but I've gone to four, and I'm talking like 100, 250 guys that were ball players only. Never mind anybody else in the community or in their lives, but so many guys come to pay their respects because of
Mhm.
the level of respect, and it's generational. It's our generation, and the guys like kind of like before us, say 10 years before us, and people 10 years after. We cover each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
For some reason, we cover each other.
Yeah, man. Yo, I went to Clyde Dardy's thing the other day, man, and it was like stand room only, out into the parking lot, man. The amount of people. It was
he was
awesome.
Clyde. Clyde was one of the guys that when I first got the Tech, right, and I was trying out for the team, he was like one of those guys that said, you'll be okay. You know how Clyde was. Clyde was always like the calming guy,
Yeah.
always like the rational guy. You know, always had his head on straight, right?
Hmm.
He was like one of these guys that basically just said, "Yeah, you can do this. You can make this team."
Hmm.
You know, give you another little story. My stepfather, or my father now, is my stepfather. My biological father, right, grew up in Brownsville,
Hmm.
and great great basketball player, right? For the 60s, had all these aspirations to actually go places. Him and Jocko were were homeboys.
Hmm.
He used to actually go down to BRC all the time. And when my father passed away, or my biological father passed away when he was 58. It was like 2001 or something like that. And I had to bury him because he had no next of kin. And they had like the service in Brownsville, and like all these people, Jocko, all these people that knew him, knew of him, showed up. And it was kind of heartwarming that he knew that all these people knew him, people that he played against, people that he played with. He was one of these guys that was in the streets as well.
Hmm.
And but just to see that, you know, that kind of like love for somebody that had, that was in the community. He was actually kind of like a he was actually kind of a pillar of the community as he got older. You
Mhm.
know, he used to teach
Mhm.
karate there, and he taught basketball. He was like,
Yeah.
he died of lung cancer, but it was it was interesting.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you. See, so here's the thing, right? One of my kids that's a basketball player, right, who is trying to raise money for his AAU team. I just spent like $80 buying fucking popcorn, which I don't, which I don't eat.
Oh man, but that's like a good segue to just show how, everything that we're saying, that connection and reaching out and being there for everybody, that the whole environment of sports and this, it comes back and haunts you constantly because, there you go. I mean, and that's
Let me
what it
ask you guys a
is.
question. What do you think of the state of AAU and high school basketball? When's the last time you've been to a high school game?
Well, I went last weekend. One of my guys, he coaches Tony Noel, Eric. He
Oh, you
coaches.
went to the game?
Yeah, I went to the game. They got a nice team. They
Uh-huh.
got a nice team, but I don't. I do it because, well, he's coaching, and I his players like to meet me and talk to me because they know I played ball. But I'm not as connected like in the community as I once was. Like when my daughter was in school, I would go to the games more. But getting back to the AAU thing, I think has ruined the freaking sport.
Oh my
That's
God.
all I gotta say. I don't want to say no more. It's. I mean, we didn't have AAU team. We had George Murray Restoration. We had Gil Reynolds.
They were
We
community teams.
we had Ray Haskins. We had that was it was different, man. It wasn't about no money,
Yeah.
man. It
It
wasn't
wasn't
about.
about money.
Yeah.
It was about molding young men.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And
Absolutely.
for my take of it is two parts. The first one, and make it real short, the first one supports exactly what Les said. The other part is the reasoning of why it's gotten the way it is. And I
Mm-hmm.
blame me. I blame you. I blame Leslie. All of us that were the next level of, players that, let's say, play for Gill and Les Pilgrim, Brooklyn USA Gauchos, whatever. Like, we didn't reciprocate and give back the way that those guys gave back. We might have gave back in a certain way, but you give back differently. And it just like the way the society is now, it opened up the door for the snakes to come in. And that in itself, whatever you think the snakes are, that you fill in the blanks on your own. I'm not going to elaborate, but that's what happened. If you leave the guard or the door open, you know, everybody's going to come in. And the people that are not capable of doing the job, they're in and they're trying to do the job. And then there's the money, then there's all the other nonsense. So it's a sad state, man. And there's not enough time in a day to talk about it. That's something that's gonna be like a story that's told like on a daily basis because there's just too much stupidness going on. It's too
Mm-hmm.
much.
I have two kids that I train that are both one's a basketball player, and a baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
And I had them in here, right? And I've got a 58-inch TV, right? They had their games posted on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And we sat here, right, on two separate occasions, and I went through their games, right? Just basically film study. I go, do you watch your film? Do you watch, I asked them even before that, do you watch film?
Mm-hmm.
Watch like, do you watch pros? Do you watch college? What do you watch?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know what you're doing is good? Other than your YouTube highlights or your Instagram, right? How do you know it's effective, right? and I'm sitting here, and I had gone to one of their games where they had actually played against each other because they played at two separate private schools, and I sat there and I'm like,
Yeah. It's
Hmm.
horrible.
when
Yeah.
you're watching these kids and they're like, they're doing this gather step, and there's nothing going on the ball, they
Yeah.
stop, you know, or they're jumping in the air, right, with no place to go, and they basically, throw the ball
Bailout. It's
into the
bailout
end.
basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know, just watching them and seeing all the time that we used to spend,
Yeah. Mhm.
spend on, getting into your spot, getting into your pocket, right? Going to get the ball, right? Instead of standing outside waiting for somebody to throw you the ball, right?
Mhm.
Defensive positioning, right? I spent like 10 minutes with this kid watching him, reversing, and showing, dude, you're chasing this guy around. Why you're chasing him at me? If I was you were guarding me, right? I'd have 30 on you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'd have
Easy.
30 on you because every time you turn your back, I'm going to the basket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I'm gonna tell my point guard, hey, he's turning his back on every time. And every time I would just go, and as soon as you turn your back, I'm going to the basket. They're throwing me, I'm getting it
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
There's and basically the whole problem, because I was deep involved in this for years. The biggest problem is everything that you're saying, Kevin. There's no attention to the detail, self detail of what you do, even down to your fantasy of you playing. You don't imagine making a good move. You just make moves. Because everything is more like synthesized instead of it being calculated with knowledge and skill sets.
Mhm.
So, and like I said, it's like it just there's not enough time on this planet to talk about it in this session, and
Right.
especially since no, we're kind of like at the end of the show, so that
Yeah.
that can be like show number two because it's a problem and
Yeah.
it's not getting better.
But I one last thing I want to say on this point, man, is that how many times and this is basic basketball, and for the guy who doesn't have any talent at all, if he has the ball and he passes it to his teammate and he stands there, doesn't move an inch. I'm like, you can't pass the ball and then just stand there.
But
But
he's told to do that,
that's basketball today, though, because
right? But he's
they
told to do that, right, Kev?
yeah,
And that's
they
ridiculous.
basically stand, they watch each other dance,
Yes.
for like 3-4 seconds. The kid that's guarding him loses interest and basically goes around him.
You know what it is? Hot potato basketball.
Mm-hmm.
You stand in a spot, toss it to you, you do your little thing, toss it to somebody else, and like you said, bailout passes. Like you were taught never to leave the floor and throw a pass, right? They do that regularly now. You
What
know,
about what about what about the skip pass? It's not even like a one over skip. It's like three guys
yeah,
over skip
yeah,
pass. What
yeah,
the fuck?
yeah. And
Yeah, but
you
they
don't even see people doing what probably because Kevin is constantly saying how the upper body strength, taking a guy to the hoop, how to do a drop step. You don't see a guy taking a guy to the hoop and like strong taking him. It's a floater. It's trying to dunk or do something fantastic
Oh, man.
or looking for a three. And it's just, the game is messed up to me. I have a hard time
I
watching
earned
it.
my bones, man, on a drop step. Come
Yeah.
on now.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
they just
But I tell you, that's what we need to do is have a part two with you, Kev. To be
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
honest
man.
with you,
Yo, Kev, I'm gonna tell you something, man. This has been a delight, man, because I knew about your career as extensive as it was, but it was nice to hear it from you because I had gotten little bits and pieces from us talking and from me reading stuff and here and there, but I knew about that. I was really interested about the Division II stuff because that was also during the time when I wasn't playing in college too. You know, yeah,
well,
yeah.
y'all, I when I left and went to the West Coast, I mean, I came back here, for I came back here 1 year, and actually that was out of a humbug. I wanted to stay out out there and work on my game. I was gonna stay in San Luis Obispo and work on my jumper and work on my jumping.
Mhm.
You know, my mother made me come home, and I wound up playing out in Centennials, their summer league.
Yeah.
And you know, I kind of lost touch with a lot of my, a lot of my Brooklyn guys, a lot of the
Mhm.
guys that I had, played in high school with. They're off doing their thing. You guys were doing, your Rucker thing,
Mhm.
you know. So my last like contact with you guys was we played in before I left, we played in a Lenox Hill tournament. Didn't you remember Lenox? They used to have a tournament in Lenox Hill up in Harlem.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, I got
Mhm.
I wound up in the ER after that tournament because I got hit with an elbow that basically split my eye open,
Wow.
and I had to go into freaking what the hell hospital was that? Lenox Hill Hospital with we're sitting there on the bench, me and my eye, right, bleeding, and there's a dude next to me with a gunshot wound, another guy with a
You're gonna be
stab wound,
sitting there for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
a couple of a
Yeah.
couple of ODs.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there, right? You're right. I didn't wind up getting out of there till like about almost 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh heck no.
Yeah.
You
Then we
know.
had to go back to then we had to go back to Long Island.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
yeah, I really kind of miss that. I didn't follow, you know, into and play, in the summer, when I was
Yeah.
back here. But I was
Yeah.
Mhm.
playing out there, man, and I kind of
Yeah.
forged a reputation out there, which I needed to kind of, reinforce by playing, again with these guys, with you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Well, you do
Yeah.
what you do, where you do it at, and
Mhm.
the success will flow in your direction, man. And that's the pretty simple part of everybody's experience is that you go somewhere and you make your mark, and you put your and you put your flag down and mark your space, and that's
Yeah,
what you
man.
did,
I
and
guess I
it's
must have because Les says he read about my exploits at some point.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's
Exactly.
always out
Exactly.
there, because like you said, if there's stuff being done, they'll find you, and even the reporters, they'll find you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and
man.
that's one of the reasons why putting people on this show gives us an opportunity to push a person's exploits in their careers, just in case somebody didn't know, because there's value in years have passed. So that's one of the reasons, an important reason why we do the show and why you're on the show is to facilitate that through, man. And for me, I'm just glad that we got you in there. I want to thank you for coming on the show today, and sharing your experiences.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it, man. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, I, I try to I try to give back as much as I can in my experiences, good and bad. And if there's any way for somebody to learn something from, anything that I've said, because I had very few of those people, when I was coming up as a 17-year-old, once I left, and you know, these kids these today, just trying to learn how to play the right way, learn how to conduct
yeah.
yourself,
Hmm.
not
And we
having.
have a responsibility to try to to
Yeah.
push that at every
That's what we are.
opportunity, because there's other people on the other side of the fence telling them you don't have to worry about that, just da 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 whatever,
Yeah.
and there's wrong advice being given to these kids. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Les, you got anything to finish with?
No, man. I just want to thank my brother Kevin Lucas, man, for coming on. And this is well overdue, man. But I'm glad that you graced us with your presence, brother.
Yes,
Hey,
definitely. All
I
right.
appreciate it, man.
Yeah. So once again, everybody, this is another one of those ENL talk shows with our guest Kevin Lucas, and we just want to let everybody know that we'll see you guys on the next show. You guys, take care.
All right. Thank you.